Oh man, I did not expect Ironheart to be the thing that I would be talking about when I finally came back to making videos, but here we are. Yes, if you've been on the internet at all lately and you follow anything even remotely superhero related, then you've probably heard some people talking about the new Ironheart show. This is a show that I originally talked about years ago when it was first announced that they had cast Dominique Thorne in the role of Riri Williams. That video is actually no longer public on my YouTube channel, but I did watch it before doing this just to see what was it that I said at the time, and I still actually agree with a lot of what I said. There are a couple things in there where because so much of it I just didn't know, like so much of it was unknown to us. A lot of it was just me speculating on what it was they were going to try and do with the show, who would possibly be into the show, and a lot of things honestly changed between when I made that video and when this show came out, just in terms of other Marvel projects that have come out since then. So now I will say in the lead up to this show, I was actually looking forward to watching it, not because of Ironheart, more so because of Parker Robbins with the hood. Now I want to say off the bat, if you're wondering, is the show actually any good? That depends. That really does depend. If you're the type of person who just does not care about Ironheart, Riri Williams, then no, probably not. It's probably not for you. You're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to have a good time. You're not going to find any redeeming qualities. So yeah, just leave it alone. And that's part of the thing that needs to be addressed with a lot of Marvel's projects now. You don't have to watch all of it. I feel like people need to learn from comic book readers. You don't have to read everything and you don't have to watch everything. This idea of the cohesive MCU, that everything plays into each other and you get little tidbits of information for grander storylines in these other shows or movies. Yeah, that you really don't need it. You especially don't need it in the movies and the shows, because anything that you need to know, they're going to present it to you in some fashion in the show or in the movie. They'll always do some sort of flashback sequence, or they'll have the characters in some sort of exposition dump will end up explaining the parts that you need to know that come from something else. They take care of it for you, so you don't have to do it. So this lie that people have told themselves that, well, I just don't want to have to keep up with everything. You were never required to keep up with everything to understand the story. You are only ever required to watch the things that actually interest you. I think that's one of the first things that needs to be acknowledged, because I see that come up so often in conversations about Marvel projects now. People talking about, well, I don't want to have to deal with watching all of that show, or I don't want to have to deal with watching this series of movies. You don't have to. Just don't bother. You really don't have to. If you're watching another movie, you see a character show up and you're like, well, I don't know who that character is. Do you care though? Do you care who that character is? Because if so, then do the research and actually find out who it was. If you care that much. If you don't have to. You don't have to know who they are. You don't have to know their backstory. You don't have to know why they care. It's not that important. What's mostly important is the story that they're telling you. You wanting to chase down every side plot line, I get it. But that's that again. You're gonna have to learn from comic book fans. Sometimes the thread is either not followed up on, or the payoff is not satisfying. So that's the other reason why you really don't need to track down every part of this unless you actually care enough to. You really don't have to otherwise. I have some stuff that I haven't seen from the MCU, mostly just because I'm not interested. If it doesn't interest me, I don't watch it. So that's my rule, and that's going to be my rule moving forward. So, having said that, what's going on with the Ironheart show as it stands right now? Granted, there have only been 3 episodes put out as of me recording this, so I don't know how the series, because it's a mini series, right? I don't know how many episodes there are, but it's basically close to being done. There aren't that many episodes, but there aren't that many episodes in anything anymore. So we're coming up on the end, but I've seen the 3 episodes that are out right now. Now, what do I think of the show overall? Honestly, I actually like it. I'm not going to lie about that. I actually have enjoyed the first 3 episodes. I thought that they were building up towards something, to the kind of conflict that I hope has the right kind of payoff. We'll end up seeing that in the end. But the overarching theme that I keep seeing throughout the show is the concept of the Faustian bargain. Now, in case you're not familiar, basically the idea of the Faustian bargain is just the deal with the devil. Basically, it's trading your soul or something very personal to yourself, or even being willing to do something incredibly evil in order to get wealth, knowledge, power, whatever it may be, that deal with an evil entity. And that's referenced to a lot of times throughout the show itself. Very specifically, obviously, in the moments when the Hood is getting these rich and powerful people to literally sign contracts that will give them money, give them power, all of these different things, give them status. That's what they're working off of. But there's also the sort of like visual references. There's the one scene where Riri is talking to Natalie, and there is just the wall of posters behind her that just say like Faust. So there are these different references to the whole Faustian bargain, and the idea that that's basically what Riri is having to deal with throughout at least these first 3 episodes, because she has the moment. I've seen a lot of people also mentioning that she's complicit in murder, so that makes her like an evil person too. But that's another one of those things that it's showing her being molded into a more heroic figure, in that every time something like that happens, like the first time when the Hood shoots that security guard that's holding her at gunpoint, in the very next episode, she ends up asking Parker, are we Ocean's 11 or are we the Sopranos? Because you can tell when she started this out, she assumed it was literally just us stealing money from rich assholes. And most people totally fine with that. And I can guarantee you that is not a new sentiment. That is a thing. Part of the reason why, like, back in the day when you had those, like, bank robbers like Bonnie and Clyde, or Babyface Nelson, like, these different gangsters, part of the reason why they were able to go on for so long was because the people in the towns that they robbed actually helped them. In many cases, they helped hide them. They helped give them, directions to where to go next. They gave them a place to stay. Like, they cheered them on. So it's very much, you can tell she had that type of idea of what this was going to be, was just, we're taking money from, rich assholes, and that's all well and good. It wasn't until the reality set in of, oh, people are going to die from this shit, and that's going to be on my hands. That's going to be on my head, on my conscience, that happened. And that's where you're seeing her start to realize the actual terms of, again, that Faustian bargain of, I want money so that I can work on my suit, so that I can perfect my suit, so I can go into, and that's why people are also asking her, and that's why I'm saying the plot is really beating you over the head with, this is a deal with the devil situation, because they keep asking her, if you're not doing this for good, if you're not doing this to be a hero, why are you doing it? And her response every time has been, because I can. A lot of people have been presenting as like that just she wants money, just that she wants things. It's not that. It's that she wants to prove to herself that she is better than what her previous iterations have been. She wants to keep building on that and get to a point where she is as well known as Tony Stark, which that's another thing that people have been talking about, the constant, because she does mention Tony Stark. It's not even really constant, honestly. It does come up a few times for very obvious reasons. The show is Ironheart. She's making, a suit based off of like Tony Stark's thing. So it's very obvious they're going to make references to Stark. What I'm not understanding is why people have a problem with her saying that she like wants to be bigger than Tony Stark, or that she wants to do things better than him. That's not really strange, is it? I mean, we have that in the real world. People right now in the tech world are very driven by the notion that they want to be better than Bill Gates and Microsoft. They want to be better than Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak and everyone else who's on the fucking team for Apple. There's really nothing wrong with wanting to be better than the people who are already at the top of the heap. That's kind of what drives people throughout their lives, that kind of ambition to want to be better than the people that they perceive to be at the very top. And I mean, her criticisms have been very mild. One of the ones that I saw was her saying, like, Tony Stark changed the game, so I'm not going to just disrespect him off rip. Which is essentially her just saying, like, I'm not going to disrespect him just because his name was brought up and I happen to be working in the same vein as what he was doing. That doesn't mean I'm going to just talk shit about him. Which is a very positive thing to say, honestly. It was acknowledging that he is kind of like the face of everything that she's trying to do. So I'm not going to say bad things about him. He laid the groundwork for me to do what I'm going to do. And I think that that's actually a very respectful way of bringing that up. Because, yeah, we all know Tony Stark had his problems. We all know that he had things that he could have worked on. And I feel like there's a lot of purposeful misconstruement, I guess we'll call it that. Other people might call it lying. I call it purposely misconstruing what's actually happening in the show, because I keep seeing this common refrain that the whole show is basically just her being a thief and just stealing whenever the mood suits her. Let's see, there were a few tweets that I saw to that effect. Only Disney could make a show about the smartest black woman in the world and have her still be a broke thief. So two things, I realized that this was obviously just a joke post, but for one thing, the show never presents her as being the smartest black woman in the world. Nobody ever says that. She never says that about herself. And we've got others like this. Remember when everyone said to give Ironheart a chance and that Riri wouldn't be as bad as she was in the comics? I'm going to touch on that a little bit in a little while. Well, she gets expelled from MIT for selling test answers. That's not true. Then steals her Iron Man suit on the way out because she built it with grant money and thinks that means it belongs to her. This is actually what Marvel decided to do here. I've seen that part presented as well, the whole she was selling test answers. She wasn't selling test answers. If you actually watch the show, what it says is she was selling completed projects. What she was doing things for other people, creating things, selling them to other students at other schools, and letting them pass it off as their own work with her not taking any of the credit for it. So essentially what she was doing was plagiarism, but in the reverse sense, in that she was letting other people take credit for her work. And I have heard at least one person mention, well, why didn't she just try going to another school? If you also, again, if you're watching the show and you're actually paying attention, you'll notice in there that when she's getting reprimanded for selling all of these completed projects,
you sold completed assignments to students at every school in the area. Cambridge, Providence, New Haven. What?
So the whole idea of, well, why didn't you just go to another school? These schools tend to, even if they don't report the exact reason you got expelled, they will still report that you got expelled because you violated the student code of conduct. And regardless of whether they say the specific reason, that weighs very heavily against you, especially in the Ivy League world. So that's one of those things where it explains why she's in the kind of predicament that she's in. Now, the bit about her stealing the suit because she built it with grant money, so she thinks that it's hers, I get it if that's a complaint you have with her. The one thing I will say is this speaks to the beginning of her story as the protagonist, in that in the beginning of this whole thing, she's not a hero. And she says that several times when she's asked in the beginning of this whole series if she built this, for the betterment of everybody. She's basically saying, no, I did it because I can. And then she wants to basically make it better so that way she can also use it, or send it out for first responders so that way it actually helps the world. So she does, in a sort of distant way, kind of have that idea of benefiting humanity, but it's more so wrapped around, well, I want to do it because I can, because I know that I'm capable of doing it. So you can definitely say that's a selfish motivation, and that's kind of my point. She's not a hero at this part of the story. That's obviously going to come later when she realizes that it's not enough for her to not be a bad person. She also has to actually be a good person in order to be a hero. So that's going to come later on in the story. That's very much the sense that you get from this. But at the beginning of this, I understand if you see her stealing the suit and you think, well, I mean, that's it. She's not a hero. She will never be considered a hero in my house. I understand that. I just hope that you are consistent across the board with that kind of mentality, because it's not like we haven't seen this before. And yes, starting out, Scott Lang was a straight up criminal. The movie starts, Ant-Man started with him getting out of prison. So we already had that established for him in the beginning. Kind of the same thing here. The only difference was Riri didn't start out in prison. She started out in MIT. I had to take my hat off because it's the beginning of summer here in South Texas, so it's a little bit warm. But I've also seen this brought up a few times. The Ironheart constantly complains that if she had billions, she could be just like Tony Stark. It's the money holding her back. And they keep bringing up how Obadiah Stane was yelling at the researcher about how Tony Stark built it in a cave with a box of scraps. That's another thing that also is being disingenuous with the way that they're presenting it, because yes, Tony Stark did create the Iron Man Mark I suit in a cave with a box of scraps. That is true, but we also have to remember that suit was very limited in what it was actually able to do. Didn't have like Jarvis integrated into it. It was basically just an iron suit with like a fucking flamethrower and some limited power capacity to it. It also didn't last beyond that one encounter. It's not like he ever used that suit again. So what he was able to build isn't exactly the same as what Riri is trying to build. And you also have to remember that Tony Stark didn't just keep using scraps. He ended up using his billions of dollars to make better suits and then make those terrible fucking nanotechnology suits. So there was all of that too. So it's not like money isn't needed to make these suits better. That's always been a thing. I don't know where all of a sudden everybody's trying to like toss this up as a gotcha of like, well, Tony Stark was able to build a suit in a cave. Yes, and it was a suit that fell apart on its first use. Oh, and then there was this one that again goes back to my original point. If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it. This is from that moment when Tony was telling Peter that if he's not able to be a hero without all of the fancy gadgets in the suit, then he doesn't deserve to have the suit. And says Riri's entire motivation is money for her suit at the cost of her morals and others' lives. I mean, like I said, the whole Fouian Bargain thing, it's there. No one's actually acknowledged it, and I get the feeling if you actually point this out to people that that's the overriding theme of the show, that they're going to tell you it's badly written because of that. Despite the fact that they didn't actually acknowledge it, once you acknowledge it to them, then they will very, very adamantly tell you that they already knew that and that's why it's bad. And then there is one more thing at the end of the third episode where her direct actions, or I guess inactions in a way, do directly lead to the death of a character. Now, again, that's another one of these situations where she's having to come up against this thing of what makes a hero, what makes a villain, because she has that moment where she could say something to save that person's life. But if she were to do that, that would end up causing, because of a revelation that comes out right before the person dies, if she had saved that person's life, it would have then ended up leading to her motivations, what she was trying to do, being outed to the larger group and possibly causing a much bigger blowback. So she had to make that split-second decision of, do I save this person or not? Now, that's one of those things where, again, you could say that makes her a bad person. She could have saved that person very easily. And yes, you could make that point. But let's not forget, the person that we're talking about who died wasn't exactly a good person. Known murderer, right? So I'm reminded one time of a character who said something along the lines of, I'm not going to kill you. But how did it go?
I won't kill you. But I don't have to save you.
And again, if your stance is that makes that character a bad person, okay, I totally hear you. That's totally fine. But I'm just hoping we're keeping this consistent across the board every time a hero in a story does something like that. Because if we're not, then you're being a little bit hypocritical for no real reason. Because that, like I said, that's not the end of this story. What happened with Riri, there's still a few more episodes, so there is still a chance for her to do something, have some sort of turnaround moment of, okay, I'm not going to end up letting that type of thing happen anymore. I'm not just going to let all of the people who do villainous things, I'm not just going to let them die just because I don't want to save them. It's one of those things where she's going to have to come to that realization of what is a hero and are you actually that? Now, you may be sitting there saying, but she's not. She's a criminal, she's a thief, she's a this, she's a that. That's, again, like I said at the beginning of the video, if you don't like the character of Ironheart or Riri Williams or both, if you don't like the character, you're not going to like the show. Because the show's about her. It's not solely about her. It also touches on some other characters like side stories and backstories. But it's still mainly about her. So if you don't like the character at all, don't watch the show. Because you're not going to enjoy it. That's the biggest thing to it. If you're at least open to finding out who this character is, yeah, definitely give it. Because it's not your straightforward, she's not I don't know any other way to say it. She's not like a goody two shoes. She has a much more gray morality to her, and that she, like I said at the beginning, she was down with stealing from people essentially, or basically extorting them into what was giving them high paying jobs. She was okay with that because it was not really physically hurting anybody. So, it's just taking money from people who have money to spend on things. So they might as well spend it on us. She was fine with that because it was the same thing as the grant thing. Money is coming from someone else who makes all of their money from some businesses or whatever the case may be, and I'm getting it from them. That's what she was okay with. And that's where I'm saying, yeah, you can still say like that still makes her a criminal, but that's wanting to put on a costume, or wanting to do these kind of things just to make money, and then sometimes your goals to make money leading to the death of another character. Again, that sounds so familiar. But if that's the thing, then that's fine. But if that's why you don't like the character, just be honest about that and move on. If if you can't get past the character's early actions in the series enough to see, do they develop into somebody? Because I saw just one person mention that she has no real character arc, but they're very clearly setting up the character arc in the fact that they keep doing this whole deal with the devil shit, and then they keep constantly literally having characters like Ezekiel Stain, who is a character in the show. They having him ask her, like, why are you doing this? What is the point of you building this suit? Like, what is your goal with all of this? Because he even kind of mentions that he didn't want to be like his dad, although we do see in there that he's very much like his dad. So it's going to be interesting. That's the other thing I'm saying. I'm actually interested in what's going on with these other characters, because I want to know what's going to end up happening with Ezekiel Stain, because it seems like he wants to be better, but then at the same time, he has a very dark side that's hiding underneath that very thin veneer. So it's going to be interesting to see how long it takes him to finally drop that mask that he's very obviously wearing. And I'm going to keep watching it for that reason, because the main reason I wanted to watch the show was because of the Hood. I like supernatural characters, so when I found out the Hood was going to be in it, I said, you know what? I've been wanting to see that character in live action for a minute, so I'll check it out. Even though I was not interested in Ironheart at all, she definitely was not written well in the comics, which is probably the last point I'll touch on. A lot of people have been criticizing the show because of the comic book character. I understand the motivation to do that, but the thing is, once you can tell they're not doing the story from the comics, and we can agree, for the most part, that the comics presented her very poorly, I would say the show does a much better job of presenting her. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the thing. It didn't work for me. Her origin story did not work for me in the comics. Wasn't interesting to me. I had no interest in reading more about her, so I avoided it. In the show, much more compelling. I'm actually interested in her backstory. I find it very, yes, sad in a way that obviously, her stepdad and her best friend were died. Like I said, I just had a problem that they were died in a drive-by shooting, and it's one of those things that I feel like they're learning what didn't work in the comics, because the whole thing in the comics of her telling the teacher, like, no, you have to tell me something that I can't do, that way I can overcome your expectations that I've forced you to have. It's different than that in this show, in that they're showing her more like she's just very personally driven, which honestly, from what I know of people who work in the tech world, that's very accurate. They are very personally driven. A lot of times they are working on things that will benefit society, but it's not so much that they're driven by some overwhelming, desire to really help all of humanity push towards a bigger, brighter future. It's more so they want to build something that the government will buy. Like with her, she's trying to build something that will go on to be used by first responders, like ambulance workers, police, firefighters. So it's something like that if you can build something that the city, the state, the federal government will buy from you, which is kind of how, Tony was making his money selling weapons, but she wants to do the opposite thing of like selling what it would essentially be like very, very, I'm assuming, advanced personalized like fire trucks that you wear as a suit instead, which would actually be a really cool idea. And that's the thing, something like that would be beneficial, but them not really caring about like that aspect of it, just making something that they know, if I build this, everyone will take attention of it because it helps everybody. But I think I've rambled enough. There's probably more I could say about my interest in the characters or the story that's being crafted so far. I'm not going to touch too much more on that because I would just be talking probably for hours about all of my speculations on this or that and the imagery and the symbolism of different things. So I'm not going to bore you too much more with that. I will say, if you are interested in anything that I've mentioned, or like I said, you find the character at least vaguely interesting, then yeah, feel free to go ahead and look into it, see if maybe, give it a watch the first episode, see if it's something that actually interests you. If not, turn it off. Don't feel like you're missing out on something, or that you're going to end up wanting to watch a movie somewhere down the line, but you're not going to understand anything that's happening because you didn't watch the entire season of Ironheart. You're going to be fine either way. Don't put that kind of stress on yourself. And I say that also to comic book readers. Don't put that kind of stress on yourself that you have to read every single comic. God, I have been there. It is not... let me tell you something, man. It is hard to keep up with comics, especially nowadays, because there are so many of them. Unless you're the type of person who just reads like Amazing Spider-Man and some of the X books. Because I've seen people like that. That's like, those are like only characters they really seem to care about, which is odd to me because there are so many comics out there. Hold on. I went ahead and pulled some of them out. I keep a stack of unread, just independent publisher comics under my desk. Right next to me, I have a stack of Image comics that I've been reading through. I have the stack that I've already read right here next to me. But yeah, like there are different companies you can go to. There's Dynamite, there's IDW. Let me see, who else do I have here? I have more IDW. There's Oni, there's Massive, there's Mad Cave. There are all these different companies that you can get comic books from that are putting out comics all the time. There's the Titan series. I love these books. The Heat Seeker and the Gun Honey series, they're really good. If you're into more spicy books, I guess, definitely read those. I even still read Valiant stuff. I've loved Valiant my entire life. This is what I'm saying. When people are acting like there's nothing of interest to them in the comic world, you're lying. There's so many different publishers and different comics that are coming out all the time. You just need to walk into the damn store and actually look for them. Now, having said all of that, if you have any thoughts on the Ironheart show, please feel free to go ahead and share those with me. I would appreciate some original thoughts. I don't really care what your favorite YouTuber said about it. I would like to know what you thought about it. If you've seen the show, if you haven't seen the show and you have no interest in watching it, still interested. Tell me why not. Do you just not find the character interesting? Did you not like the comics? Whatever the reason may be, feel free to let me know that down below in the comments. I'm going to work on getting more videos out here soon. Like I said, I didn't expect this to be the first one that I ended up making, but well, there were enough people talking about this, and I had just seen the 3 episodes. Finally got mostly everything set up as far as the room. Probably need a touch more light in here, but I'll work on that as time permits. Anyway, like I said, I will be working on more videos, so feel free to stay tuned, stay subscribed. Feel free to subscribe if you're new here. Like I said, leave me any comments, any thoughts down below, and I will see you guys next time.